Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thanks so much for joining me today. Over the last few weeks, I've been talking about things related to things that add to our stress, particularly during the holiday season, but really it's all relevant any time of year. It's just that during the holiday season, everything is kind of heightened a little bit. So this week on social media, I'm focusing on self-care as a way to help mitigate some of the stress around the holidays. And in addition to alleviating a little bit of stress, self-care is actually a really important practice for emotional healing, particularly traumatic healing or trauma wounding healing. Things that you've experienced in your life that have made you believe that you're not worthy, that you're not deserving of care for yourself. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this today, not just in terms of the importance of self-care, but what it actually does when we don't practice self-care. So what comes to mind when you think about practicing self-care? What immediately ideas come to mind, or what immediate resistance do you notice? Do you say to yourself you don't have time, that you'll do it when this thing gets done or that gets checked off? Do you think of it in terms of something that you need to set aside quite a bit of time for, or maybe even financial resources, like a full day to go hang out at a spa or get away for a weekend, away from the kids, a week off of work? Those things are all certainly forms of self-care, but self-care can really happen moment to moment. It doesn't have to be something really significant. And I've talked about that before, but today I want to specifically talk about what happens when you have a desire, or especially a need, that you push to the side. So there's things that we want, there's things that we'd like to experience, and then there's things that our mind, our body, our heart need to sustain us, to help us feel connected and joyful, or even to a point where we could potentially feel joyful. When we are not paying attention to what we need and desire, the impact is actually quite significant, even though it doesn't feel like there's anything direct happening to reinforce that sense of unworthiness, not being good enough, being undeserving, being somebody who doesn't deserve support or care. So when you have something happening within you, a desire or a need, and even if you don't acknowledge it, but especially if you recognize that it's there, like you want to take a nap, or you'd like to take a day off, or you'd like to get a babysitter for the children, or you'd like a particular type of dinner, you'd like to reach out to a friend, any of those kinds of things. So there are things that you might recognize that you have this little inkling of that you'd like to do or experience. Sometimes it's a need. Your stomach growls, you feel thirsty, you're really exhausted and you need a break. Your body is hurting, you're not feeling well. You recognize that your heart is aching for connection. Those are needs. Those are things that we need to feel happy, to feel fulfilled, to feel like our life has purpose. But we shut ourselves off from all of that very easily and pretty automatically because everybody else comes first. We are taught, all of us to an extent, are taught that other people come first. As women, we're particularly conditioned for that we have to be nice and we have to be kind, and how does that make somebody else feel? So we're conditioned to not pay so much attention to what's going on within us, but really be aware of what's happening with everybody else. And of course, it's nice to be kind and to be aware of other people's needs, but that's not healthy, especially or particularly when you ignore yours. So, what happens when you have a desire or a need and you dismiss it? You do not honor it in whatever way that looks. And this may be happening consciously. So you may recognize that there's something that you want or need, and then you may recognize what you say to yourself about that. Like, I don't have time right now. When this is over, that's selfish, whatever it is. So you might recognize that that's happening. But you may not. You might immediately shut down that want or need without any awareness that it's even there, without any deliberate action on your part to squash it. Because your system has gotten to the place where it automatically, when you feel like you want something or you need something, your system automatically shuts it down. Because you're used to not allowing yourself to get what you want or need. And maybe, for many of you watching this, quite likely, you were taught fairly directly that what you want or need doesn't matter. And maybe that was verbalized to you. Maybe it was very clear and specific. But maybe it wasn't. In fact, for a lot of you, it likely wasn't very direct that way. It was more being treated in a way, even kind of neglected or ignored when you wanted something or when you were feeling something. So all of those messages we take in, we internalize them. So then when a want or need comes up, it's immediately shut down. But your being, your soul still recognizes that it's there. So when it shuts down immediately, in that moment, your needs and your desires no longer matter. And when it happens on a subconscious or unconscious level, it actually can have even more impact most of the time than if we're aware that we're saying to ourselves, it doesn't matter, it's not important. Because the things that are not in our awareness have more power. When we bring it to our awareness, we at least have the opportunity, when we become even more aware, we have the opportunity to change what we're saying to ourselves about that. We have the opportunity to do it differently. But when it's happening under the surface, we don't get that opportunity. We just are told immediately by our own system that we don't matter. And so when we have a need or a desire and we automatically push it down or we talk ourselves out of it, either one, we are telling ourselves literally in that moment that it doesn't matter. And for people that have been wounded in childhood, it is literally telling that little girl or boy that she or he doesn't matter. We are doing to that child within us the same things on an emotional level that were done to us by others as children, in terms of teaching us about our worthiness. So if you were ignored, if your needs or desires were not met, if they were ridiculed, if they were ignored, if they were, if you were abused, if the opposite was happening, when we in our adult lives completely push away any needs or desires, we are literally saying to ourselves that that doesn't matter. And because that little girl or boy lives within us, we are therefore telling her or him that she or he doesn't matter. Because so many of those wants stem from a longing, right? Even the desire to get away for a weekend. Now, that might be very relevant for all the stress you're dealing with right now, but it probably feels somewhat familiar. Do you remember as a kid, if you lived in a really chaotic, dysfunctional, or abusive home, do you remember ever having this sense of wishing you could just get away from whatever it is? So everything that is unresolved, we keep with us to an extent. And so if as a child we received messages, even from our own mind, that we didn't matter, when we do that as an adult, it's a familiar feeling because we're so used to experiencing it already as children. So when you have, when you're hungry and you tell yourself that you shouldn't be hungry, or that you need to stop eating so much, or everybody else or everything else needs to be taken care of, and then you'll find time to eat. Imagine saying that to a child. You shouldn't want to eat. You just ate. What's wrong with you? You shouldn't be hungry. I'll take care of you. I'll feed you after I've taken care of everything else. Imagine saying that to a child. I'm pretty confident that that is not something that any of you would do. Yet, we do it to ourselves all the time. If you're feeling lonely, and maybe you have the desire to connect with somebody, but you're afraid, so you tell yourself, no, I shouldn't want that, or I don't need that, or they're going to be too busy, or I'll try to make time for that later this week. You are telling yourself that what you're desiring in that moment doesn't matter. At least doesn't matter as much as all of that other stuff. And every time that you do that, you are reinforcing that core belief of being unworthy or undeserving or not enough. That you're literally saying to yourself that you don't matter as much as all of this other stuff or all of these other people. And of course, there are times that we have to put other people first. I'm not suggesting that it becomes all about you and you never think about other people. Particularly in a work setting, sometimes there are things that you have to do that maybe you don't want to do, deadlines to meet, that kind of thing. Although oftentimes there maybe are some boundaries you could set there, but that's a whole other topic. When it comes to children or being a caregiver in general, certainly there are times that your needs are going to come secondary to theirs. And that's okay under those particular types of circumstances. But what's important is that you don't just mindlessly push it away and never get to it. In a situation where you have to take care of something or somebody needs something from you, but you're feeling that you need something different or wanting something different, it's okay and probably a good thing to think about what this person needs and how to make that happen. But at the same time, you can acknowledge to yourself it's okay that you want it instead of ridiculing yourself for it. Instead of telling yourself that you're being weak or you're being selfish or whatever it is. So you can say, okay, I really don't want to do this right now. So after I've completed this or after I've finished this, I'm going to make sure to set aside 20 minutes later today or 2 hours at the end of the week or whatever it's going to be, but you're doing it with intention. You're doing it from a mindful place of recognizing and honoring what is there for you while still doing this other thing. And I also know that for many of you watching this, it actually isn't so much a matter of true responsibility that you have for somebody else, like a caregiver role or a co-working role or a job type of situation. It's that you are so used to believing that everybody else matters more than you do. And that's what we need to shift. But as long as you continue to ignore your own needs and desires, that can never shift. Because every time, again, you are reinforcing that you don't matter, that what you want doesn't matter, that it's not important, that what you need doesn't matter. One of the things that I've shared many times in regards to ways to practice self-care, and I'm sure I've shared it here on YouTube as well, is something like even taking a bathroom break. Now, this may seem a little odd, so just stick with me for a moment. And this is true for both men and women, but I think people who are caregiving can definitely relate to this, where you feel like you need to go to the bathroom, but there's something else that needs to get done first. And so you do that. And then, of course, something else comes up that somebody wants or needs, and then you do that. And you're just constantly in that mode. And before you know it, and maybe you're not even aware that you know it because you're not focused on that, you're focused on all this other stuff. But not only 10 minutes goes by, but 2 hours maybe have gone by. And you still haven't taken a bathroom break. Or you feel thirsty, but you don't go get that glass of water. It's 2 hours past your lunch break, and you haven't eaten yet because people keep needing something from you. All of this reinforces that everything else matters more than you do. And this is why self-care plays such an important role in emotional healing, in trauma healing, and interpersonal wounding healing. Because when you are intentional about practicing self-care, and so what I mean by that is thinking about or taking a moment to check in with yourself. What would I want right now if I could have what I wanted, if I could do what I wanted? What do I need right now? Is my body asking me for anything? When you connect within and recognize that, that's a point of awareness. That's a point of connecting to your mind, your heart, and your body. That's healing. When you recognize that there's something there and you act on it, you are honoring yourself. And that is healing. Because in that honoring your want or need, you are affirming that you are worthy. And it doesn't even have to be conscious thought, as long as you're mindfully doing it. And if you can, remind yourself as you're doing it that you deserve to be taken care of, that you deserve that time or resource or whatever it is. That's even more helpful. But just the act of paying attention to what you want or need and then acting on it deliberately, that is healing. Every time you do that, you're taking one step up that mountain. And it doesn't have to be big. In fact, it's the little moments of self-care that make the biggest difference, truly. So checking in with yourself every once in a while, especially if you're feeling really stressed, to make sure that you're breathing full, deep breaths. That is self-care. Taking a bathroom break when needed. Drinking something when you're thirsty. Noticing when you're hungry. Noticing when you're full. That is also self-care. When you're feeling a little isolated or alone or afraid, finding an opportunity for connection, even if it feels vulnerable. Taking a moment to yourself. Getting outside and letting the sun touch your skin. There's so many ways that we can practice self-care. It doesn't have to be a spa getaway. It doesn't have to be a bubble bath. It doesn't have to be anything like that. Sure, if you've got the time, the inclination, the resources to be able to do that, then by all means, please do that. But don't miss the small things. Don't miss the things that you can be doing on a daily basis to honor yourself, to take care of yourself, to show yourself that you matter, because you do. And if you keep ignoring that, if you keep pushing your needs and desires away, you will never be able to fully believe, to truly, deeply trust that you are worthy, that you are always enough. Thanks so much for watching. If you are new here, welcome, and please make sure to subscribe and click the little bell for notifications. And if you found this video helpful, I would love it if you gave it a thumbs up. It will help other people find it as well. And if you know somebody who might benefit from this, please consider sharing it with them. Thanks so much for watching again, and I will look forward to seeing you soon.